It's definitely a king. I think this mound was built in the 7th century BC, 2700 years ago to be exact.
яғни бұдан 2700 жыл бұрын. Осы обаның ішінен, сыртынан, іргесінен осындай бір...
We found a gold treasure near the mound. Such a treasure has never been found in Kazakhstan before.
Барып қалды. Бұл енді Қазақстанда бұрын соңды бұндай қойма табылмаған.
Major archaeological discoveries are a rare gift that land brings to explorers. In order to place an ancient artifact under the museum glass, you need to shovel tons of earth. This time, scientists were very lucky. But first things first. We invite famous Kazakh archaeologists to our Beyond Time TV program, which will tell us more about the latest developments in archaeology and share the history of the amazing historical discoveries. These studies have contributed to the ancient history timeline. East Kazakhstan is a huge region stretching from Altai in the north and to China in the east. There is a lot of everything: water, mountains, plains, sun, and wind. Good climate and abundance of resources have been attractive to people at all times. Scientists found traces of residents aged 40,000 years on the territory of the region. It seems that over the years of research in the history of the ancient world in the region, there are no longer any blank spots. However, in 2011, a valley hidden among the mountains was revealed to the world. We have a road of more than 400 kilometers to get to this archaeological treasury. Stop and listen to the stream bubbling and the birds singing in those trees. Our goal is the Tarbagatay Ridge, the Eleke Sazy Valley. But before we get there, a great adventure awaits us, because the road goes through the most beautiful nature of the East Kazakhstan region. Well, this fast car will bring us to our destination. Let's go. The car really turned out to be fast and solid. We didn't care about broken mountain paths that break the car and spoil the tires. The Eleke Sazy Valley is a hard-to-reach place surrounded by the Tarbagatay Mountains. It is difficult for a modern person to get here, but it is much easier for a nomad with his herds and flocks of sheep. The ancient tribes gradually wandered in these places. The world was not divided into capitals and villages. The valley, cut off from civilization, lives according to those laws. There is no communication, electricity, asphalt, and concrete. However, the bulbs sometimes do light up in the camp of archaeologists where we arrived after a long journey. We are met by the head of the expedition, Doctor of Historical Sciences, Professor Abdesh Teliubayev. He made many significant discoveries. This year is the 50th anniversary of the scientist field season. And the topic of the research is appropriate: a huge Saka mound, traditionally called royal because of its size. The mound that you see behind my back was first seen by Abdesh Teliubayev in the late 80s. In the 2000s, archaeologists noticed the Eleke Sazy Valley. Today is 2020, and we are getting ready to find out the secret of the largest mound.
Bunun diametri 89 metr. Mına көріп отырсыздар, mına қорғанның өзі.
As you can see, the diameter of the mound itself is 89 meters. There is a moat around the mound. If we count together with the moat, it will be 104 meters. Outside, there are also various memorial structures of 8 stones around it. If we count with them, the diameter of the mound will increase to 130 to 140 meters. In general, such mounds on the land of Kazakhstan are very rare.
Обалар Қазақстан жерінде сирек.
Sarkurgans have been the object of research of the scientists since 2003. At that time, Abdish Tolubayev discovered a plundered mound in the Shilikta Valley, not far from Eleke Sazy, the remains of the Saka leader scattered after the devastation. Now the famous warrior adorns the Gol Hall of the East Kazakhstan Regional Museum of History and Local Law. Since then, every year the country's historical funds have been replenished with the finds of Abdish Tashkenovich and his team. The detachment has been working at Eleke Sazy since last year. They arrived on behalf of the head of the region, Daniel Akhmetov, who initiated a program for the development of archaeology in the region. The Saki Mounds are the key to the ancient mysterious tribe that lived here between 2,500 and 3,000 years ago. The goal of archaeologists is not the contents of earthly burials, but the construction of the mound. When we find out how and why the builders built the artificial hill, we will understand their worldview and identify the cultural code.
Қазір біз жаңағы траншея жүргізіп, оңтүстіктен солтүстікке қарай мынау және шығыстан батысқа қарай жартылай траншея жүргіздік, ар жағына өтпей.
We have made 3 trenches from south to north and from east to west. This square burials and ritual places were discovered. Behind us is a grave stretching from south to north. It is usually round or quadrangular. You can see here that it stretches from south to north for 12 to 13 meters. I think there are definitely 2 burial places here.
Дөңгелек қана болу керек, не төртбұрышты болу керек. Ал көріп отырсыздар, бұл 12-13 метрге оңтүстіктен солтүстікке созылып жатыр. Мен ойлаймын, бұл жерде міндетті түрде 2 жерлеу орны бар, 2 адам жерленген.
From the east, a dromos, a stone corridor stretches to the burial place inside the mound.
Мынау топырақтан қыш қиыршық тастардан құралған осы қабырхананың айналасы міне. Осы жарты ай сияқты немесе жаңағы таға сияқты.
This mass of sand and small stones forms a structure in the shape of a crescent or a horseshoe around the grave. It's framed with large stones. Usually, among such large stones, there are ritual items. There are decorations or household items intended for this person. During the research, it turned out that this mound is much more complex than it seems at first glance. It turned out that it is the most valuable building in terms of its historical significance.
Өйткені бұл әлдеқайда күрделі құрылыс болып шықты. Әлдеқайда жалпы өзінің мәні жағынан, тарихи мәні жағынан өте құнды құрылыс болып шықты.
A detachment of several dozen people is engaged in clearing the giant mound. They usually arrive at the site in May and leave in fall. The weather in the highlands is characterized by sharp contrasts. On the hottest summer day, you can fry eggs on the stones. This day ends on an icy night, and all the grass is covered with white frost by dawn. But the men are not afraid. Local residents are happy to go here to earn extra money, and young scientists to gain experience from veterans. Akbar Yergabilov arrived from Almaty. He's a lecturer at the Faculty of History, Archaeology and Ethnology of the Al-Farabi Kazakh National University. Working at Eleke Sazy is an opportunity to study the phenomenon of a giant ancient burial ground in the field. There are only 56 mounds here. These are the largest. The rest go in a row. This mound, that mound, over there, 3 stone mounds are arranged in one row. A little further, we have 3 more objects. They are all called ordinary mounds. Warriors and ordinary people were buried there. All of them are at the same level from 30 centimeters to 1 meter high. Akbar explained to us on the reason archaeologists take months to explore just one mound. Heavy equipment works at such facilities only at the first stage. As soon as the first stones appear under the layer of earth, archaeologists take shovels in their hands. You need to get to the burial place as carefully as possible, and along the way to understand what layers the mound consists of. Scientists carefully record every step they take and fill all the data into their maps. They create both interactive drone map and operate the all on paper. This drawing gives us an idea of the structure of the mound. Here are all the layers of the mound from the top to the bottom. Thus, our mound consists of layers of sod and yellow soil, as well as layers of small stones. Maksud Khamitov is a researcher of the expedition. This year he graduated from Kazakh, named after Al-Farabi. He participates in archaeological expeditions from the first year.
The
lowest layer is the continental layer. Then there are sod layers. Then comes sand mixed with brown-yellow clay, which builders put this layer for strengthening. Then we will see crushed stone. Builders use small stones in order to strengthen the mound and give it hardness. Then comes the modern turf layer mixed with stones. In the large royal mounds, the graves are not located below the horizon. All were buried above the ground. This is an above-ground burial. Underground burials are those ordinary mounds. They are located below ground level at a depth of 1.5 to 2 meters. Probably it was robbed for the first time a couple of thousand years ago, and then acts of vandalism were repeated during the time of Peter the Great, when the artels of muggers filled the newly created cabinet of curiosities, and in our time by underground diggers.
Міне жалпы орта нүктесі осы міне. Орта нүктесі осы болды. Былай қарай міне осы тұстан бастап анау түбіне.
This is the midpoint. From this point to that end, everything was sunk in, up to 3 meters deep. Therefore, we used the equipment. On the grounds that tracks of the robbery were long, we followed their tracks with a width of 20 meters and entered with equipment.
Ені 20 метр. Алдық та сол техниканың көмегімен кірдік.
It was completely covered with stone boulders in order to protect from rodents and other animals. In general, everything was provided for this place. Is it thin-walled? Yes, generally good for firing.
Міне бір жерден керамика шықты. Мына жерден адамның қол сүйегінің шыбығы шықты. Содан кейін
Pottery and thin bone of a human hand was found here. Also somewhere here, a fragment of a human skull was found. We think this is a sign of robbery because they were found on the surface of the grave pit. In general, we started excavations with the assumption that this mound was looted. In general, among such large structures of Saka Scythians, there are no undisturbed ones. Sometimes, some of them rob clean and leave nothing. However, in some cases, the robbers leave something behind. For example, if there are 2 graves here, perhaps one of them might have been overlooked. Around the mound, archaeologists have discovered a series of altars, each of which consists of 8 stones. Abdesh Tuleubayev suggests that the number 8 played a special role in the worldview of the Sakas.
Бұл жерде жалпы ыдыс-аяқ, малдың сүйектерін өздерінің бір ырымдары болған, сондайды қояды. Бұны
Dishes and animal bones were left here, which were associated with some kind of superstition. If you launch the drone, you will see that the altars form a circle around the mound. A lot of gold is often found in the ground around altars. Here are 8 stones. In general, they should lie in such a beautiful circle. This one is probably completely looted. If you look at those stones, they lie beautifully in their places.
Мыналар мен тон алган. Мына сыйыр басып кулатты ана тастарды.
Thousands of years ago, these rounded stones cut the waters of rivers that have flowed here since time immemorial. Hundreds of builders carried stones and soil here, and for several years they erected this burial structure. It's definitely a king.
Менің қазір дәл мерзімдеуші материал шыққан жоқ.
We have not yet found any dating material. Preliminary, based on the structure of the mound, the external layout of the mound as well as structures outside, I think that this mound was built in the 7th century BC, 2,700 years ago to be exact.
7-ші ғасырда салынған болу керек, яғни бұдан 2700 жыл бұрын.
Last year, the professor's book about the early Saki Shikta culture was published, which according to the scientists is the most ancient Saka culture in Eurasia. Shilikta is located at a distance of about 100 kilometers from Eleke Sazy, which suggests that there is a cultural connection between the inhabitants of these two sites. According to Abdesh Tuleubayev, 2,000 years ago, starting from the Bronze Age, Saka tribes lived in this territory, which was just transitioning to a nomadic lifestyle. Their main activities were cattle breeding, but at the same time, metallurgy developed and grain crops such as millet, oats, and barley were cultivated.
Алғаш сақтарда мемлекеттілік болған деп мына шіліктің 2003 жылы.
For the first time claiming that the Sakas had statehood, I explored the mound in Shilikta in 2003. I published an article saying that the Sakas had a state structure in order to rule the people, involve them in production, and build such beautiful structures. This is a great architectural solution. It is not so easy to put things together. This requires knowledge, great organizational forces, and a special state organizational body.
Ұйымдастырушылық сол жаңағы арнайы мемлекеттік аппарат керек.
The camp of archaeologists in the Eleke Sazy Valley lives life. In the daytime, carts with earth scurry back and forth. Sometimes the sound of shovels dies down. Either a find has fallen into the soil and everyone is looking at it, discussing it, or it's time for lunch. They march with a song for lunch. And we have the opportunity to look around and drive to the foothills, where the summer houses of the shepherds, the main suppliers of fresh products for archaeologists, are located. Now we will taste the local products. This is how people lived in this valley on a simple milk and meat diet around 1,000 and 3,000 years ago. We taste real fresh kumis on jailao. Stunning landscapes, herds of horses, birds of prey. Such pictures have long become textbooks. This is how Kazakhstan appears in films and on the pages of books. Writer Kanat Kayimov has been coming here for inspiration for the 5th year already. He has been writing books for children all his life, worked for the Ulan newspaper, and comes from these places. He collects material for a new book here, in the cradle of the Eurasian nomadic culture. We often talk about our native people, land, and tribe when we are raising a small child.
Оның барлығы бір бөлінуге басқаға байланысты дүние емес. Бұл деген
This is all aimed at ensuring that the child knows who he is, where he is from, and knows his story. Then he will grow up to be a conscious citizen, a patriot who loves his people.
Саналы сондай елін сүйетін жаңа патриот азамат болады.
This amazing feeling belonging to the native history embraces everyone who gets to the archaeological site. Ancient rituals and traditions, which often arose due to the way of life of their ancestors, become understandable. They also gathered around campfires on dark nights. Only the songs were different then. New day, new task. In addition to the main object, the group of Abdesh Telubayev is also exploring a chain of ordinary mounds, which make up a single ensemble with the Sar Mound.
Мынау біздің қазба 1. Жалпы бұның диаметрі 10 метр.
Here is our excavation number 1. The diameter of the mound is 10 meters. The height is 0.4 meters. At first, it was a mound covered with soil, sod, and stone. In the beginning, we divide the object into 4 sectors, from east to west, from south to north. First of all, we remove the sod layer. After removing the sod layer, a layer of stones opened. The stones in the center were scattered. Therefore, the mound is looted.
Ортасында тастар жалпы шашылып жатты, өйткені бұл тоналған олар. Төмен жаңа қабір шұңқырын қазу барысында
Below, when we were digging a burial ground, we found human bones in different layers. When the mound was robbed, human bone, shin bone, and ribs remained on each layer. In addition, they also found a gold earring.
сырға шықты.
The maximum that archaeologists find are scattered fragments of the bones of the buried, sometimes the bones of animals, either sacrificial or the remains of a meal of robbers. There are lamb bones, but an interesting feature was discovered here. 14 asics were found. In general, asics were placed in graves next to children. In many of our works, we noticed that in childhood, ancient people play asik, and therefore they were placed in children's graves. And here, as you can see, the bones are large. Therefore, since these are the bones of a large adult, we assume that we are dealing with shamanism. This man was a shaman. Nurbek Kakabayev is a history teacher from the city of Semey. For the 4th year, he has been participating in the expeditions of Abdesh Telubayev. For him, this is an opportunity to immerse himself in educational material and tell children about the events of the past.
Жалпы қазба барысында мына ағаш тапқан едік.
During the excavation process, we found a tree. Once upon a time, the burial pit was surrounded by wood material that propped up. Over time, or maybe when they were robbed, the tree fell and was crushed by stones. We are now defining the contours. There were enough hunters for Saka gold for almost 3,000 years of existence of these burials. Such mounds are robbed 2 to 3 times. They are robbed in their time and in the recent past, and now too. The necropolis of Eleke Sazy was looted 3 to 4 years ago. Underground archaeologists came and robbed everything. Therefore, for 2 years now, a police station was set up below, and they make rounds every single day. A quiet valley 10 years ago, where only farmers graze their livestock, today attracts the attention of the whole country, and after a series of sensational discoveries, the whole world. Last year, 8 large archaeological teams worked here simultaneously. Underground diggers follow in the footsteps of archaeologists. Such sudden fame is not to the taste of the indigenous people. The local Akim came to see the progress of the excavations. How many graves have been excavated? 4 small ones dug up, and this one is big. We just looked at the graves that were excavated in 2018-2019. I received statements from the citizens that the excavated burial mounds remained open.
соны көрейін енді.
I wanted to see. It's better to see once than hear 100 times.
Көзіме көрейін деп келдім.
There are necropolises scattered throughout the Eleke Sazy valley. Many of them are awaiting reclamation or be brought to museums. Despite the fact that these graves have often been subjected to barbaric robberies before, it is the actions of scientists that raise questions from the population. Because there is a lot of dissatisfaction from the local people and residents, various problems arise among the inhabitants of the Aul, who are always sick. There is no rain, therefore drought. It is necessary to bury it again. It will calm the people, but on the other hand, it may be good for the arwahs. I think so. If research allows, the ashes from the graves are returned. However, this is a long process. According to Abdesh Tuleubayev, the Shilikta golden warrior recovered in 2003 returned back only in 2011, until the remains had passed all the examinations. But now we know the features of his face, the fact that he was left-handed and ate meat and dairy products. The scientist believes that it is necessary to explain the value of archaeological research to the population.
Сондықтан мен
That's why I tell them, this is a state project. This is our state. This land, I have already spoken about it. I know the graves of my 13 ancestors.
ертең біреу мына жердегі
Tomorrow someone, this neighbor or that other neighbors in the south, in the north may say, hey, this was once my land. 1,000 generations of my ancestors rest under my feet. If I can prove it, then without regret, I can die on the same day.
сол күні өліп кетсем де арманым жоқ.
The summer of 2020 is not rich in findings. The season is almost running out and the archaeologists have a dozen items in their treasury. These are fragments of pottery that were found in the large mound of Eleke Sazy.
Қабырхананың үстіңгі бөлігінен табылған.
Parts of pottery were found in the upper layers of the burial. We are rebuilding and collecting parts now. This is a jug or a bowl, and we can say only after we collected it completely.
Бөлшектерін тауып құрастырғаннан кейін нақты қандай ыдыс екенін біз айта аламыз.
The ancients made signs on clothes from thin gold foil. They, like bronze patches for horse harness covered with gold, were found near the altars. This earring is the only find in the plundered mound. Probably the thieves did not notice the jewelry, but even scarce materials are valuable for signs. Everything will be examined. Therefore, new pages will appear in the annals of the Saka tribes. The burial mound is investigated by two methods. They dig with shovels and study the territory by the method of geophysical research.
Оборудование
The equipment is one of the best, Australian, high frequency, pulse device. There are also geo-radars. At the moment, the mound is being opened and we are examining the removal from the mound.
Вынос с кургана. Выносится оттуда грунт, и иногда пропускаются мелкие частицы металла там, и так далее.
The soil is carried out from there, and sometimes small particles from the metal are passed. We use technology to scan every meter and find something. This equipment simplifies and significantly adds efficiency to the work.
Добавляет на работе коэффициент полезного действия.
Roman likes history since he was in school. For 15 years now, he has been fond of such technical devices. He started with coins on the beach, and now he helps to survey the soil during excavations. Unfortunately, I didn't find anything in this dump, but I hope the men who will work here with the soil will be luckier, and they will make a real major discovery. During these days, Roman probed the ground around the altars, and a promising signal came in response. Open the stones, clean it well, then open these scraped stones at the base. Here is a good call for non-ferrous metals.
Сканировали. И здесь очень много звонков. Прямо буквально на каждом шагу. И оказывается, вот это место мастерская и...
The day before yesterday, we scanned this place, and there are a lot of signals at every step. It turns out that this place is a workshop, and there was an ore smelting furnace. There were also metallurgists. Their metallurgical technology was the highest in Central Asia. This is iron waste after smelting and molding, as well as after the manufacture of some products.
Начинается где-то широкое использование где-то с 5-4 веков до нашей эры. То есть саки наши.
The use of iron on the territory of Kazakhstan begins somewhere in the 5th to 4th centuries BC. Early Saka mostly used bronze, although there were plenty of iron ores. But for a long time, it was believed that this was backwardness. Somewhat later, the introduction of iron products. In fact, Kazakhstan throughout Eurasia is the center of bronze, and bronze items were in no way inferior in strength to early iron items. Therefore, for a long time, bronze prevailed in our country and was used for a long time.
Изделия, они ничем не уступали по прочности ранним железным вещам. Поэтому долгое время у нас бронза, она преобладала и долгое время использовалась.
Metallurgical furnaces in the vicinity of the Sars's Mound. This is how the professor had previously designated the find, but officials' conclusions will be made later. Inspired by the discovery, Abdesh Tashkenovich ordered to probe the slopes of the mound, and here the team was in for a surprise. The day of the expedition began as a usual hot summer day. However, in the evening, a treasure was discovered under the stonework on the southeastern side of the mound. It contains dozens of gold items, among which there is one that has no analogues, according to the assurances of our professor.
Какие-то, да? Барса.
This is part of the horse's bridle. An incredible sight opened to the detachment. At a shallow depth in the soil, a huge amount of gold items. Outlandish animals made in the Saka style, chains, pendants, it seemed that they had no end. It seems you and I will lie here until evening. It was possible to discover precious artifacts thanks to the technical resources of the expedition. It was evening. I was walking here and was tired and came across a signal, so deep, colored, but very unusual. That's it, I told our professor. The professor replied that tomorrow morning we'll see what's there. About an hour ago, we found a treasure. All of the gold is horse exercise ornaments and harness.
Мен ойлаймын, көбінесе жүген, өмілдірік және құйысқанның да әшекейлері.
I think it's mainly decorations for a bridle, a bib, a horse's hairstyle. Among them are figurines of a deer, a mythical beast from the feline family that looks like a tiger with large ears.
Жолбарысқа ұқсайтын, соның кейін құлағы қалқиған мысық тұқымдас бір дүниелер бар. Осының мынау көріп отырсыздар.
As you can see, there are pendants on chains. The ends of the pendants are in 4-leaf decorations. This is not found in the art of Saka Scythians of Eurasia. I think that 70 to 80% of the jewelry is new. They have not been found before, either in Kazakhstan or in Eurasia.
Оның ішіндегі, мен ойлаймын, бір 70-80% Қазақстан жерінде де, Еуразияда да кездеспеген жаңа әшекей бұйымдар. Бұл енді
According to my assumptions, if this mound belongs to the 7th century, these things were brought as worship to this king, as gifts to the arwah for the afterlife.
жаңағы мінәжат етіп, патшаға сыйлық ретінде аруаққа о дүниелік сыйлық ретінде әкеліп қойған дүние.
Later, archaeologists estimate that the treasure consists of 850 gold items, all of which are part of a luxurious horse harness. Probably the ancient Sakas dressed up a horse of the tribal leader for the ceremonial exit. Consequently, this indicates that the ruler rested in the royal mound. Unfortunately, as it turned out at the end of the field season, the burial of the giant mound was empty. Its contents, along with the remains of the king, disappeared after a barbaric robbery. We will never know who did it and when. Archaeologists for their work received a worthy reward, a golden treasure. This treasure has already become a historical discovery that has no analogues in its size. Scientists studying the treasure will draw inspiration for new research. Visiting the museum, we will be amazed at what incredible skill our ancestors owned, and art that is now forever timeless.